Hello, a very warm good morning to all of you, and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to today's The Hindu newspaper analysis, where we take a look at the daily edition of today's The Hindu newspaper, analyze the important articles of the day, look at the answer writing practice as well, and along with that, also take a look at the articles of the PIB. So, in total, combined, we are going to have a discussion for around 12 different topics and articles. So, the editorial section is where we are going to have a complete discussion of all the articles. Challenge of India's digital sovereignty, relevant for your GS paper 2 as well as for GS paper 3. Then, world that China desires and is shaping, the changing global order as per China's worldview, and how, in a way, in a very subtle manner, China is bringing the influences of its own beliefs into the world order, relevant for your GS paper too. Deadly fumes, about the industrial disaster which happened in Tamil Nadu, which has led to the death of many of the individuals. So it is again a string of these industrial disasters which have been happening over the past month or so. So, what are the basic learnings out of it? Now, that is relevant for your GS paper 3. Stay with the evidence. This is the science based article associated with the fixed dose combinations of the drugs which have been banned in certain cases. A Trojan horse has breached the IITs. This is about how various different types of superstitious studies are being done in the name of Indian knowledge system, and how that has percolated and taken deeper roots in many of the IITs, and that poses a larger issue. So we will have a brief discussion around it for GS paper 3. Reclaiming Tamil Nadu's fiscal autonomy. Now, this is basically on the entire article is based upon the white paper which has been published by the newly appointed Tamil Nadu government, and talking about Tamil Nadu's fiscal issue, whereby the revenue expenditure is much more and the space for fiscal autonomy has reduced in Tamil Nadu. So that is the article about. Then few of the articles for prelims and a couple of them for PIB is what we are going to consider. So we'll start with the first article without further ado. But before that, we are having the Shiksha Mahotsav. The triple treat is there for 2027 aspirants, 6 months plus 6 months free at 16,999. Please understand, the entire GS syllabus, along with your CSAT, will be covered by the best educators, coverage of the syllabus, and that too in a structured manner. Now, 9 months, you get another 9 months free, plus the 9 months assured program as well, 21,999. 12 months, having the 12 months free, and this is where the 12 months assure. So you have various different treats for all the different aspirants. Use the code IES English and avail the maximum discount available at that particular day. Now we come to the first article, the challenges of India's digital sovereignty. But before we come into the exact definition of what do we mean by digital sovereignty, a recap of few of the things which have happened in the recent past. In the month of April, we basically woke up to this kind of a news story that Pakistan used Chinese CCTV networks to access Indian assets for potential strikes. What was this? Basically, ISI, Pakistan's ISI, was monitoring India's CCTV networks actively in sensitive areas, and particularly looking at the troop movements, the installations that we have, the deployments that we have on a real time basis. All of this was happening. It was eventually caught by Delhi police, but the police sources have indicated that the problem has been much larger. And where this did this problem arise from? So these CCTVs, they have a Chinese software that was SA Cloud. Now this SE Cloud basically transmitted all the data to the servers back home. And from there, the Pakistani ISI could easily access all the data. That tells you the amount of risk to the national security that is posed by the lack of digital sovereignty. Other than that, now this is a kind of a foreign intrusion, direct foreign intrusion. But there is also what is digital incapacity, whereby we had this case in 2025 where Russian backed Nayara Energy taps Indian IT firm after Microsoft suspends service. Now, what was this? Nayara Energy basically was sanctioned by the Western countries. And immediately following that, Microsoft and other various different software sector services, they stopped their services to Nayara Energy, crippling its entire functioning. So it was a decision taken by Western countries, but a digitally crippling impact was laid threadbare on the Indian companies. All of this indicates that it is important for any particular country to maintain a kind of a digitally secure and a kind of an autonomy based strategic independence. So that brings us to the basic question: what do we mean by digital sovereignty? What is this digital sovereignty? So, digital sovereignty refers to a nation's ability to control and secure its digital infrastructure, data, and technological ecosystems without excessive external dependence. Not only the storage of the data, but also the utilization of the data, the architecture of the systems that you are using. Everything needs to be based out of your country. Presently, what is the situation that we are in? Majority of the digital architecture or the infrastructure that we have, even though some of them, the cloud storage etc., is being done in our country, but still it is managed by the global MNCs which are based out of India. So just like the case of the Nayara Energy, where Microsoft very conveniently stopped its services, it can happen that these MNCs can stop their services and can stop the functionality of these particular activities in India. It can happen almost immediately. So, that is where the foreign controlled digital infrastructure is what we rely upon substantially. Even when data is physically stored in India, foreign companies may be legally compelled. Let's suppose US tomorrow makes a norm that Microsoft is not going to provide services to any person or any business in these areas. India can be impacted, and the impact is much more massive. It spans to the case of the security situation as well. And that is what we saw with the case of the headlines, where Pakistan based ISI, that is their intelligence service, has been deeply monitoring all our activities in greater detail. Now, think about it. This also brings us to the case of the Kargil War, 1999. Now, even though it has not officially been admitted, but it is one of the most prevalent and commonly known stories arising out of the 1999 Kargil War. It is, the story goes, that majority of our weapon systems, they required guidance, and that guidance was provided by the GPS. Now, GPS is controlled by US based satellites. Just like GLONASS is uh, controlled by the Russian satellites, GPS is controlled by the US satellites. Now, imagine if you basically are firing a bomb, right? You're dropping a bomb from the Jaguar jets or the MiG 21 jets, which were used in Kargil 1999. Now, those bombs need to be guided. They will follow a GPS coordinate. Now, US at that critical point of time withdrew the GPS services from that sector. And they basically said that we don't want this conflict to go on. So India was left crippled. And thanks to the extraordinary amount of bravado indicated by the Indian Air Force, that is where visually these bombs were guided, putting their lives at risk. So such kind of dependence on foreign systems in digital world can always lead to a crippling blow in the present day situation. Now, here foreign manufacturers can restrict operational capabilities, right? For example, the guidance systems degrade the system's performance in itself. For example, a few years ago, there was also the incidents where the Chinese hackers completely degraded India's electrical grid around the region of Mumbai metropolitan area. So think about it like that, they can bring a particular economy to a screeching halt, then limit access to the various intelligence sources and influence battlefield outcomes indirectly. Your various different missile systems, where your different guidance systems, they work on the satellite system coordination. If that satellite system coordination doesn't work, the impact will be massive. Now, here India has basically carried on some of the measures, but then they are limited in nature. Across the globe, we are seeing this trend of having a kind of a digital sovereignty from European nations now, thanks to the Trumpian era that we are living in. Now, even the European nations have felt the need to strengthen their own sovereign status when it comes to the digital economy. France, for example, plans sovereign alternatives to the communication platform. Germany, Denmark are exploring alternatives to American software systems. EU, Turkey, all of these. In India also, we have had the case where we had the development of Navik, right? Our own navigation system. But Navik right now is quite defunct, isn't it? Now, out of the eight satellites, we only have three of them. Out of the eight, we only have three of them which are functional. Now, many of them have only one way communication which can be carried out. So, that is where ISRO has laid out a plan for the redeployment and re energization of Navik. But clearly, we are lagging in that space. So, if let's suppose war does break out today, we will very much be dependent on the GPS and the GLONASS, right? And that is where the Chinese, the in the case of Iran war, we saw that the Iranians, backed by the Chinese satellite system, could have a substantial advantage over the region and enable to attack in order to attack the enemies and the local adversaries. Then promotion of UPI and RuPay, reducing dependence on the foreign payment networks, adoption of indigenous digital platforms, strengthening semiconductor manufacturing capabilities. All of these are India's own efforts which are being done to ensure that there is some amount of sovereignty. But when it comes to semiconductors, etc., we are still at least a couple of decades away from being at the global forefront. We will still be dependent on foreign tech for at least 1.5 decades minimum, but the work has started. Many of the government sectors, the ministries, now they have switched to platforms like Zoho in order to ensure that there is a kind of a sovereign architecture on which they rely. Now that has to be strengthened over a period of time. The communication networks, etc., that has to be done on the kind of your own, so to say, domestically developed, domestically based systems. Now, the article argues that this is also an era where development in isolation is something which is not possible. Technology is ever prevalent and ever changing. So, as a consequence, as a developing nation on our own, we cannot think about mastering a particular technology on our own in isolation with other countries. So, that is where we should have a strategic partnership model also to develop some of the critical technology so that not only are we dependent, the other country is also dependent. So, in case of global isolation, we are not left alone. Like it is a kind of a simple mentality or to avoid isolation, so to say. So that is where the article argues that we can go for a kind of a strategic partnership at a multilateral, at a partner level across the world, and thereby develop technology like the BrahMos system, India's most successful export, right? Developed by India and Russia. Critical technologies were developed, and we are not dependent on any such foreign countries, so as to say, to supply us with the BrahMos platform. For example, take the case of the M77 howitzers that we have, the guns that we have taken from US. Now we will be dependent on US for any upgrades required. That is where the Rafale deal, the impending Rafale deal, it is taking a longer period of time to close that deal. Why? Because India is demanding the access to the source codes so that it can maintain that digital sovereignty. Now, India US Semiconductor Cooperation Pact Silica Initiative, India being a part of the Pact Silica Initiative. Now, this does pave a way for a positive future in these cases, but then overall, there has to be more work which needs to be done. So, what is the way ahead? What is the way forward in this? Now, in this particular case, the way forward has to be very comprehensive. It cannot be a single point agenda that only, let's suppose, R&D or only one particular aspect. But the most important is research and development. Research and development is vitally important. Unless and until you carry out that continuous phase of research, development, failure, testing, reiteration, research, and again going for new development, you will never come to the cutting edge technology. And this is where our investment is very, very low. Our overall share of GDP for R&D is around roughly 0.7 to 0.8% of the GDP. Okay. Ideally, minimum it should be close to around 2.5%. Certain economies, you will find that the R&D, the ratio to the GDP is even surpassing around 4%. We don't have the capacity. It is, and please also understand that many of the times the candidates, they have the misconception that if, let's suppose, the R&D spend is only 0.7 to 0.8% in next year's budget, why doesn't the government give extra 50,000 crore or 1 lakh crore? You cannot simply pump in more money. You need enough institutions to absorb that money. For example, let's suppose when we talk about CSIR, right? One of the scientific research institutes that we have, or ICAR, Agricultural Research Institute, that you have. If tomorrow you provide extra 50,000 crores to ICAR for 1 year, will it be able to make use of it? No. It needs to have the programs, the plans, the processes in place. It needs to have the manpower, the infrastructure in place in order to absorb that money, in order to have that research. But right now, we don't have that. So that is why, first of all, capacity addition needs to be done so that the extra budget can be absorbed. Now, in our country for R&D, another major problem has been that R&D is absolutely crowded with government funding. Government funding is the majority share, holds the majority share in the R&D. Private sector investment in research and development is minuscule, very minimal. That is where across the world, if you take a look at the best examples from US to even the case in China to the case in South Korea to any country of the world which has advanced technologically, the technological development is always led by the private sector. That is where the bulk of the funding comes from. In our country, what is the solution that we provide? What is the solution that you as a candidate provides? Government should give more money. Governments always have a limitation of how much money they can devote to research and development. That is where the private sector needs to step up and they need to carry out more research. And in our country, take a look at any private sector. The funding that they provide to newer research and development is very minimal. In our country, the trend has been that whatever has already been done in, let's suppose, US or China, let's copy it and implement it in India. That is where the gap exists massively. So private sector partnership is a must even in development of the digital infrastructure. Strategic partnerships with the foreign countries and multilateral groupings, and prepare for all scenarios, all various different types of scenarios. Whether you will have the case of, let's suppose, what do we mean by prepare for all scenarios is Let's suppose today we are having a working relationship with US. Let's suppose that relationship worsens. Now, is India prepared for that? That today, suddenly, if cloud services of Microsoft, etc., are withdrawn from India, are we prepared for that? So, we should be prepared for all scenarios. We should be able to war game the situation, war preparedness also, if let's suppose GPS help, etc., is withdrawn. The earliest, and when I say earliest, this is something which should be done within the next year and a half, where the earliest reconstruction of the entire NAVIC system and its further upgradation needs to be done with greater urgency. That is more important for us than any of the headline missions that we are pursuing, from Gaganyaan to Bharatiya Antariksh Station, etc. So there we need to push in greater effort. Only then can we have the true sense of digital sovereignty. Okay. So that is the case of this particular entire article around digital sovereignty in a nutshell. Okay. Now, from this area, prelims based question won't be asked. This is a very thematic based article. From here, you basically will have a mains type of question, which can definitely be asked either this year or next year. So, what is digital sovereignty? Discuss its relevance in the context of a rising power like India. Now, when you write this answer, now this is a kind of an question where writing the answer becomes simple. Why? Identify the main keyword which is asked in the question. The main keyword in the question is digital sovereignty. That's it. Right? So, in your intro, just talk about the definition of digital sovereignty. Okay. Digital sovereignty refers to owning of the architecture, the data associated, the definition that we have mentioned in the PPT. Just mention that. Okay. Now, Navik, yes, but Navik is not mentioned in the article explicitly. That is, Navik is something that we have picked out of it. Navik right now, unless and until new satellite launches are there, Navik will not be asked. Because think about it. In the case of the prelims, do you find questions associated with the Rukminis and the Aryabhatta satellite systems that India has launched? No. Why? Because they are old. Why was the question asked about Navik? Because it was in current affairs that year. Okay. So please understand the context in which the questions are asked. If it comes into news again, definitely it will be asked. But as long as the Navik system is not in news, please don't chase the ghosts of the past PYQs in UPSC. Don't ever do that. Then after that, in the body portion, okay, what do you write in this case? In the context of rising power like India, the relevance of digital sovereignty. So, when we talk about the relevance of digital sovereignty, first you need to take a background or provide a background about why it is important. So, for that particular case, you need to provide the aspect regarding the issues with foreign control. Okay, foreign control. And thereby you can mention this, that for example the war fighting abilities can be degraded, services to the cloud infrastructure can be degraded. Okay, so that is where you first of all lay the foundation for the issues, then you talk about the solution. Then, after that, relevance in the context of a rising power. This is also a keyword, rising power. That also needs to be addressed. So, after this, once you have laid the issues, after that, talk about rising power. Now, India is the rising power, so it will face challenges going ahead into the future. Various existent powers like the US, China, etc., will try everything in their wherewithal in order to restrict India's rise or have a controlled rise of India. You had the State Department spokesperson who had come for the rise in a dialogue in India, who he talked about it, that we are not going to follow. the mistakes that we did with China, we allowed China to grow, but we won't follow that with India. So that was threadbare. So think about it. So rising power like India is going to face strategic challenges and limitations. In order to overcome that, we need to have our own digital sovereignty. And that is where then mention the steps taken by India, steps taken by India. Okay. After that, mention the way ahead. What needs to be done? Okay. Then in the conclusion portion, mention that in the 21st century, as a country aims to be the superpower and Viksit Bharat by 2047, that will be on the backbone of digital growth. That digital growth can never be sustainable if it is dependent on someone else. It has to be home built, it has to be homegrown, and it has to be self sufficient. So, thereby, in your conclusion, use the term Viksit Bharat 2047, and that is where the keywords can matter. Okay. Now, the world that China desires and is shaping. Now, basically, we are in an era, this is relevant for your GS paper too. We are in an era where, after maybe 100 years, we are seeing the change in the global order. The last time the global order changed, it was not so sudden, it was quite slow and gradual. And that was in the early 1900s, when the British supremacy was slowly and steadily diminished by the rising US. But it was slow, right? And both of them more or less agreed on the values of democracy, etc. Here, after 100 years, for the first time, we are seeing the rise of a superpower, and that superpower is challenging the world order on a day to day basis. And this is what the article talks about, the world that China desires and is shaping. And we, many of the times, as Indians, we don't accept this. We think about China as still developing and still us being in race, but we have to accept the reality that China has already arrived as a major competition to the US, and that US is not going to have any intervention if China is on the playground. So China has already arrived there, and slowly and steadily, by the various initiatives like the Belt and Road initiatives, the developmental initiatives, China is reshaping the global order. So basically, when we talk about the international order has got two dimensions. Okay, two dimensions. One is institutional dimension, institutional. Another is normative. What is the meaning of this? And what are the types of this? Why do we study this? What is institutional international order? For example, let's suppose we consider the Bretton Woods Institute. Who are the Bretton Woods Institute, by the way? Bretton Woods Institutes. Bretton Woods Institutes include IMF, World Bank. Right. Then let's suppose WTO. Why are they referred to as the Bretton Woods Institute? IMF and World Bank? Let us know in the comment section below, or we'll discuss tomorrow. WTO, right? The UN organizations, UN based organizations. All these are the international institutional organizations, right? So that is the international order, which is institutional. These are the international institutions. What do we mean by normative? So, international order is also driven by certain principles. What are those principles? For example, rule of law, democracy, freedom of thought. These are the basic ideas, right? Non interference to liberal norms of human rights, democratic governance, free market, free market. Okay. Then after that, free speech, democratic governance. Okay. These are some of the normative international order based aspects that the international order runs on these Westphalian principles. Now, what is China doing? China, when it comes to these institutions, it has started to dominate these institutions. On the face of the US withdrawal, where US is cutting the funding provided to these institutions, China has increased the funding that it provides to these institutions. China has increased the amount of money that it gives, so that the control is there from the inside. But when it comes to these principled approaches, that is where China is taking a different stance. For the Chinese, it has for a long period of time, you would hear from the time of Hu Jintao, since that point of time, Wen Jiabao, since that point of time, all the way to Xi Jinping. You hear this phrase coming out of China that Chinese democracy or Chinese governance and government doesn't follow the Western model of democracy. We also have democracy, but our model is a Chinese model of democracy. It is not the Western model of democracy. It fits the Chinese culture. They have changed the very meaning of democracy. For them, democracy is not dependent on the voice of the people. For them, democracy is based on the outcome. That is, if you are getting good services, if you are getting economic growth, everything is justified, regardless of whatever the CPC does. So they basically compromise on these normative aspect. And wherever the international rules go against them, they don't follow it. They simply don't align with that. So that is where it provides a kind of a unique paradox or a dichotomy where China, on one hand, says that, look, we are the liberators of the modern world. That is what, even in Xi Jinping and the Trump summit, it came out. And after that, when China recently published its newest 5 year plan, it said that, look, we are the saviors of multilateralism out there. We are the ones who are saving multilateralism. We are not like US who will intervene anywhere. We believe in the development of all. And they have started this security initiative, civilization initiative, development initiative. Why? In order to capture the global imagination that this is what the Chinese led development is going to look like. While the institutional infrastructure is what they back, the normative aspect is what they lack. Okay, so what they have been doing for institutional influence, paying UN dues quite ahead of schedule, increasing the amount of money that they pay as well, supporting restoration of the WTO appellate body, promoting international cooperation through the various global initiatives. Which are the global initiatives? These are the global initiatives. We'll talk about that. Contribution to the UN regular budget has increased from less than 1% to over 20% in the past decade and a couple of decades. And it has created parallel institutions as well. Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, New Development Bank, and the SCO. So China is conveying to the world that we are the new champions of multilateralism. We are different from US who takes unilateral action. And that is where it has started the UN development, the Global Development Initiative, to help the poorer countries of the world achieve the sustainable development goal. But the reality of this development initiative, as highlighted by multiple different independent organizations, have been that the Chinese deep state basically extends its influence in the poorer nations with the help of these developmental initiatives. The amount of bribes which are given to the less developed countries and their officials in the name of developmental initiatives have been very huge. Then you have what is the Global Security Initiative. This is a kind of a direct response that Xi Jinping provided to the formation of Quad. Quad basically was China centered. Now, it is a different matter that Trump has diluted Quad. And in Trumpian world, Quad does not matter. But when Quad was on the rise and was gaining importance, particularly during the Joe Biden years at that point of time, China formed the Security Initiative. And it said that, look, we are not targeting any particular country. Our security initiative is going to be based on non interference. Global Civilization Initiative, right? Promotes respect for civilizational diversity. Now, this is rich coming from a country where the entire Uyghur population has been oppressed. You cannot have the titles or your names cannot have certain words included. Worship places have been closed, etc. Now they are celebrating civilizational diversity across the world. Global Governance Initiative to reform the global governance structure. This is the global initiative in order to imprint the Chinese values and the models across the world. This is what the Chinese have been doing. But there are a lot of contradictions, right? The South China Sea arbitration ruling that came, if it values the international institutions, it should have accepted it. It rejected it. Now it continues to engage with India and Bhutan in quite an adversarial manner on the border issues, uses the Belt and Road Initiative for a kind of a predatory economics. We have seen the case that how it cripples the economy of a particular region, makes it completely dependent on China, and thereafter starts increasing the control. Pakistan has become a complete vassal or a feudal or a state completely dependent on China. If the Chinese take their hand out of Pakistan, Pakistan can crumble within a day or two. Is similar is the case with Iran now. Same is the case, has been the case for a long time with Sri Lanka. So, like that in the entire region, it has been the case in Central Asia as well. So, the Chinese have been using these techniques in order to increase their hegemony. But on the face of it, they say that we are basically promoting a global order. Now, in the face of this, what is the implication for India? How should India look at it? Because unlike US, we are confronted with a unique problem. US doesn't have this long border of 3,000 plus kilometers and lakh plus troops confronting each other with China. US doesn't have that problem. European nations don't have that problem. India faces that problem. So, what are the implications for India? And how should India move ahead? So, this is where India should follow the case of CCM, that is, cooperation, collaboration, as well as management. What is this CCM approach? Now, this is a tool followed in international diplomacy, right? Now, this basically has been prevalent post the Second World War. Post the Second World War, this was a tool which was made very popular in the international diplomacy and the international relations jargon. Now, what is this management? For example, when you are facing an adversary who is powerful, stronger than you cannot ask them that please cooperate with me. Tomorrow, let's suppose Iran cannot go up to US and say that cooperate with me with all the cases and we will have a peaceful future. No. Similarly, India cannot go ahead and tell China that let's have a cooperation in case of the military disputes that we have or the support that you are providing to Pakistan, and let's ensure that no future issues arise. No. So we have to manage this. So that is where management of border issues, border and security challenges. China will keep on throwing these challenges at us, and we have to accept this reality. For China, it does not need to get into a direct skirmish with India anymore. It can keep on doing that through Pakistan. Ensure that India keeps on getting engaged with Pakistan, and thereby China keeps on rising and India's rise is halted. So there we have to manage this relationship. Collaboration. Collaboration where? So in areas where there can be mutual benefit. For example, when we talk about, let's suppose, the case of technological frontier, cultural exchanges, right? That is where. So, for example, tech. So, there we can have collaboration, right? Then, even in terms of education, we can have partner institutions out there as well. Then, cooperation. We can cooperate and we should cooperate in certain areas. For example, in areas of climate change, when it comes to the global south, that is where oftentimes India and China are on the same side of the spectrum, right? Even right now, or recently concluded the Bonn Climate Summit, there also India and China lied at the same side of the spectrum. So, climate change, then the combined cultural heritage, both of them have applied for UNESCO recognition for Yuan Sang, right? So, combined cultural heritage. Then humanitarian and disaster relief op- operations. There we can have the cooperation. So that is where China's rise is inevitable and it has happened. India has to rise. We still have to cover that journey of 30 to 40 years. And for that to happen, we need to follow this CCM approach carefully in a calibrated manner in order to ensure that the century truly is that of the Asian century. Okay. BRI is against India, definitely. And BRI is used for terrestrial and global influence. Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. And it is also for economic hegemony, even for territorial gains in certain regions of Central Asia, it has been done. Every country has got trade deficit to China. There is no country which will have the kind of trade surplus with China. Okay, please understand that. And it is because of the Chinese model of economy. Our model of economy is consumption based. Chinese model of economy is export based. And they have developed that economic model since the early 1990s, right? That is why in our economic system, it can be more resilient in certain cases. But the Chinese economy provides a scope for very sudden and exponential growth. So that is the very different model of economic progress. And this has been something which was followed since the New World policy of Deng Xiaoping in the 70s and the 80s. That is when the Chinese started to open up. They wanted to have that technology so that they can sell to the world. Okay. You can add trade. Definitely, yes. Now, here, deadly fumes. We already have the mentorship program for the aspirants of 2027 under the Iconic Pro and the Platinum as well. Anil, you can take that. Now, deadly fumes. This follows the article regarding and the news regarding the ammonia leakage, the ammonia gas leakage, which has happened in Tamil Nadu, which has claimed multiple lives. Now, a few weeks back, we have been discussing the articles about the industrial disaster which happened in Rajasthan, the industrial disaster which happened in the case of Andhra Pradesh, in Telangana. So, industrial disasters are always very frequent in our country. We have also discussed in the previous newspaper analysis the ILO conventions associated with industrial disasters. Many of them we have not met, we have not ratified as well. Right. So those ILO conventions, I'm not going to repeat it. Please take a look at the and download the previous PDFs itself. Now, regarding the present day situation, where you had the ammonia gas leakage from a seafood processing industry, now, what this was, why this was quite alarming was because there were certain recommendations provided by the state safety regulator, and those recommendations were not followed. For example, simple recommendations like providing a water curtain, right? What is a water curtain, by the way? Water curtain is, let's suppose in case there is a leakage. So if this is the exit of that leakage, here there will be complete high pressured supply of water. That is a water curtain, right? So that the gas can be neutralized and nullified there itself. So various different safety recommendations which were provided has not been accepted. The number of hazardous incidents across the country has been increasing, and oftentimes it is the migrant and the poor laborers who are at the risk of this. Okay, so here basically what should be done? So that is all that we are going to take a look into. So first of all, why it has happened, the reason, the it is sub judice, by the way, and a detailed report will be submitted within a couple of days. But it is about ignorance of the safety protocols. Okay. Then after that, it also has the case of the poorer regulatory framework framework where even if you are violating some of the protocols, there is no penalization, immediate penalization, which is done. Okay. Then after that, lack of emergency protocols or emergency evacuation systems. Systems. Okay. So this is where you have some of the reasons. Detailed reason will be provided in a couple of days. You will have another article for that also. But what is the way ahead in this? The way ahead required in this is basically regulations need to be strengthened as per the global standards. Safety protocols have to be followed. Very severe penalization needs to be done. Severe penalty needs to be imposed on the people who are, even the case of the regulators, even the inspectors from the side of the government who were supposed to carry out regular inspections but have not carried out. So, unless and until you hold the people in power responsible, till that point of time, you will never have the desired outcome. Okay. Now, after this, the next article. Why India is not using the China model? Well, we can have a separate lecture for 1 hour only on this. But in very simple words, for the first, in let's suppose 20 to 30 words. First of all, China championed this model at a time when the global economy was expanding, when everyone was going for globalization. GATT system was followed by the WTO norms. At that point of time, China reached that export surplus, and that is where the export based economy started developing. Then the local model of governance in China, where the mayor is in power and the mayor is in charge, right? So the mayor, when it comes to allocating business land, allocating electricity, even deciding the number of workers who will get employed, mayor is all powerful. So every mayor would compete with each other in order to set the largest industries, and they would have the target where to export. In our country, the localized governance model is absolutely in shambles. The 73rd and the 74th Amendment Act to the Constitution have had very limited financial devolution, which is done. So let's suppose you want to set up an industry in the outskirts of Bangalore. Where do you go? Do you go to the mayor? Do you go to the deputy chief minister? Do you go to the chief minister? Do you go to the union minister? Where do you go? So many doors you have to knock. By the time that you actually set up, the cost to capital is very high. So that is where the population, and also please understand, China never had the burden of the welfareist model of economy. So it could endlessly spend in infrastructure, improve its logistical efficiency. And that is where It followed a kind of an economic prudence which India can never do. For example, Deng Xiaoping was very infamous that he, in the 1980s, he basically fired close to around 18 million people from government jobs. Can you think about a situation like that emerging in India, even in the case of the fiscal prudence? No. So please understand, both of them are different models of governance, different models of society, different models of economy. So you cannot obviously compare them. You need to have a complete background. But again, it is a very simplified version that I have provided you. There is much more in depth into it, and there is much more nuanced argument to be made. Now, stay with the evidence. Now, this is basically the case where you had the health ministry's recommendation of a recent ban on fixed dose combinations. What is fixed dose combination? Okay, so these are FDCs. So 16 FDCs have been banned by the health ministry. So when we talk about the 16 FDCs, so what are these FDCs, by the way? So let's suppose you go to the market to buy, you are suffering from a disease, you go to the market to buy medicines. Now they have given you four pills, four tablets, right? Let's suppose you have been given four tablets. Now, one tablet is there to take care of the fever. One tablet is there to take care of, let's suppose, indigestion. One tablet is there to take care of your headache. One tablet is there to take care of the muscle pain. Right? There are four tablets that you have. Now, consuming four tablets on a daily basis is quite difficult, cumbersome. Many people don't prefer that. Now, pharma companies, they find out that, okay, always fever is accompanied by headache. Many of the time, fever is also accompanied by the indigestion or digestive issues. So, what they will do, they will take the gastro medicine, okay, plus the fever medicine, certain proportion of it, X% plus Y%, they will combine this and make it a one tablet dose. Right? That is a fixed dose combination. Similarly, it can be for dermatological issues, skin based issues, right? It can be for your muscle pain, anything. So these are your FDCs. It is different from your generic medicines, by the way. So fixed dose combinations generally target two or more problems, and there are combination of two or more different solutions as well. So these FDCs, they are basically the ones which are opposed or which have been banned. Now, the reason for the ban. What is the reason? The reason is quite simple. Let's suppose you have a person A, a person B. Now, A's body is not the same as B. So let's suppose A has got greater gastro problems associated with fever, whereas B does not have gastro problems at all. Age profile might be different as well. So if let's suppose A is at an age of 15 years, B is at an age of, let's suppose, 55 years, both of their body will react differently. So in that case, the tablet that is the FDC, which has X% of gastro and Y% of fever medicine, will it work in a similar manner to A and B? No. So there are immense amount of reactions, right? Immense amount of reactions which occur. Reactions as in the side effects. The side effects are huge. And that is why the health ministry has said that certain fixed dose combinations should be discontinued because it doesn't serve the population well. It can have a lot of unwanted side effects. Many of the side effects people don't even realize. Okay. But then why do we have these FDCs? Simple, in order to make it less cumbersome. and also the pharma companies end up gaining more out of this. But it is not purely a greed based mechanism. Also, this was a kind of a global trend which started in the western countries. It gripped India as well, but in many of the western countries they have shifted away from these FDCs. Now in our country we still have this system which continues to go on. So in a nutshell, body's requirement is different, age requirement is different, region based, the digestive ability etc is different, external stimuli, that is the environment, how your body reacts to the environment, that is different. So that is why you can should not have these FDCs continued. That is why the health ministry has discontinued it. But having said that, there is still a lot of work to be done. In what way? For example, still in pharmacies, is it the case that the health ministry has issued the order and immediately it all of it will be withdrawn from all the pharmacies? Absolutely no. The pharmacies will continue to sell that. That is where the state drug regulators, they need to be active. They need to seize these medicines wherever it is being sold. And that is also where large scale awareness campaigns need to be launched. Patients, definitely, many of the patients won't be aware about these kind of bans or these kind of regulations, but at least when it comes to hospitals, doctors, they should be basically made a medium of this communication, so that at least they don't prescribe any kind of these medicines. Yes. Okay, yes, very good point, Manisha, that basically the female and the male anatomy is also different. Okay. Now, a Trojan horse has breached the IITs. Now, this is a very thought provoking article, so to say. Now, why I picked up this article? Because this can be used in the larger context. Separate question around it will not be asked. But in the larger context of the conversation, it can always be used. That is, you have the case of the Indian knowledge system. Indian knowledge system. Now, this Indian knowledge system is to be propagated, is to be promoted in order to promote overall the indigenous knowledge that we have had, indigenous amount of the knowledge pool. Now, mind you, when we say indigenous knowledge, we always proudly say, isn't it, that zero was basically invented here, philosophy, the Indian philosophy, quite rich, from the Shunya to the Nyaya tradition to the Charvak theory to the atomic principle, everything is where we have a substantial amount of Indian own knowledge system is very massive. From the case of the Buddhism to the case of the Jainism, the philosophical knowledge is great. Anatomical knowledge from the Sanhita, knowledge of surgery. So, Indian knowledge system is quite rich. So, as per the new education policy, this Indian education knowledge system is to be promoted. Ayurveda, Sushruta Samhita, all of them. Yes. Now, in the name of promoting this Indian knowledge system, I hope everybody is aware what are there in Indian knowledge system. The philosophical aspects, the scientific approaches, the literary approaches, everything is included. Regional languages, everything. Now, in the name of promoting this, this is something which has been a part of the NEP 2020. Many of the IITs, many of the Indian Institute of Technologies. Now, IITs post independence has been the poster child of cutting edge technology for India. It has not served us to the extent that it should have, but nonetheless, it is the poster child, right? It has produced for us the Sundar Pichais of the world. It has produced for us the greatest amount of technological prowess that we can have. So, these IITs, the article argues that in the name of promoting Indian knowledge system, they are promoting pseudoscience. Now, what is this pseudoscience that they are promoting? That is the case of many of the IITs have had research papers and seminars associated with reincarnation. Okay. Now, whether reincarnation is possible or not, and they have been spending considerable amount of time, money, energy into this. For that, they basically also got that partnering of the University of Virginia. Now, that also is dicey. So, what they basically did in this, that is why it is referred to as a pseudoscience, that basically they showed certain images to a kid, and they mapped the mind stimuli, that on which of this image the kid's mind works substantially, and based upon that they were able to map out that what the past life, or whether there has been a past life or not. So that is what the article argues, that this basically ignores the basic idea of Indian knowledge system. And what this is doing is, this is promoting pseudoscience, and this is in a way adhering to a particular set of thought which wants a certain outcome. And that is what the IITs are not meant for. So, what is the way forward? That is what, as a candidate, you should know. What is the way forward in this? The way forward should be that basically we should, when it comes to the Indian knowledge system, we should have a very clear cut goal based outcome and a goal based approach, that this is the philosophy that we should study more into, this is where additional research should be carried out, this is the scientific approach, this is the linguistic tradition, and then we can have a better outcome going ahead into the future. Now, reclaiming Tamil Nadu's fiscal autonomy. Now, the new Tamil Nadu government, which was voted in power recently, came up with a white paper, which has been a norm in Indian politics for some time now. Basically, the central governments do it. The DMK government in Tamil Nadu in 2021 did it. And you now have the case of Vijay's government in 2026. They also did it. It all started in Andhra Pradesh. It was started by Chandrababu Naidu. And Chandrababu Naidu, basically, he started publishing the white paper. Then it was then taken up by Mamta Banerjee as well. So various different leaders have done that in the past, and this is just the continuance of that trend. Now, why do the states publish that white paper? What is that white paper? That tells you the white paper is a kind of a transparent reflection of what the state's fiscal status is, in order to indicate to the public that, look, this is the fiscal condition that we have inherited. So this is our legroom, what we can do. Don't expect anything extraordinary out of us. This is what we can do. So that is what the white paper does. Now, this white paper, which was presented by Tamil Nadu government, that indicated a very precarious situation in that white paper, even though it is not indicated in the article. But in that white paper, it is around 120 pages. Now, the Tamil Nadu state government has compared its own state's finances with states like Maharashtra and Karnataka of the comparable size. There, the capital expenditure has been reducing. Capital expenditure, when the states basically spend to create infrastructure and assets. So the share of capital expenditure as compared to the GDP has been reducing in Tamil Nadu faster than the other states. And Tamil Nadu's own revenue expenditure has been increasing sky high. So that is where you have, for example, the distribution companies, the power companies. Power companies are facing a massive loss of more than 2.5 lakh crores, right? There is immense amount of leakage in terms of revenue realization also in Tamil Nadu. For example, when it comes to the excise duty realization, excise duty, that for anything that you produce, you charge that tax. So for example, on liquor, you have that excise duty. Now alcohol and alcoholic beverages, now in that, the amount of leakage is immense to the Tasmac shops which are there in Tamil Nadu. The white paper has also indicated the extremity of welfareism. While welfareism is required, it has indicated one of the cases of the civic organization which is also facing a debt burden of close to around 2.5 to 3 lakh crores, which is not small, 2.5 to 3 lakh crores. And one of the programs which has been run by successive governments now, for example, the Pongal scheme. Now, as per the Pongal scheme, you have the goodies provided to the population, grains, sugar, saris. Then you have one sugarcane, customary sugarcane, and also dhotis in certain cases. Now, over a period of, along with that, cash transfer is now also promised. So this basically has amounted to huge amount of revenue burden. So that is where the condition of Tamil Nadu is quite precarious. Now, the article base coming to the article now, the article argues that look, this is the issue that Tamil Nadu is facing. This is further exaggerated by the central's reduced devolution of funds. As per the Finance Commission recommendation, center is giving lesser funds to Tamil Nadu as compared to earlier. So Tamil Nadu needs to be given more funds from the center. But the reality of the matter is that each and every state, they also need to do a better job in terms of their fiscal management. You have what is known as the FRBM, right? The fiscal responsibilities and the budget management. Now, that FRBM talks about the fiscal deficit that the center and the states can maintain. Now, Tamil Nadu government has amended it the maximum number of times in the recent past as compared to the states of the same size, like Maharashtra, Karnataka, etc. So, that is where the states have to rethink their fiscal prerogative. And mind you, Tamil Nadu has one of the oldest population, average age around 34 years. So, as a consequence of that, the ability of the state to generate lot of revenue and to pay the debt is going to reduce with the passage of time. So, that is where a lot of work needs to be done. Okay, that is the entire story around it. And now, some of the key pointers. Cumulative debt is about 28% of the state economy, which is huge. On an average, individual pays 38,000 annually in taxes to the state, and the state spends approximately 54,000 per person. This difference about lack of tax realization, that is met through borrowing. Okay. Now, historically, Tamil Nadu was able to finance its own situation or its own economy. But now it has led to a decline. So, own tax revenue, state's own tax revenue to GSDP ratio, as you can see, was 7.92% in 2011-12, and now it is 5.45%. Even the GST collections are much lesser as compared to the other industrial states which are there. Now, this is despite the fact that Tamil Nadu is India's second largest economic state and GSDP of 35.3 lakh crore is there. But still, Tamil Nadu collects lower GST as compared to Karnataka and Gujarat. Why? Why? There are leakages in the system, right? Where are the leakages? For example, motor vehicles. Now, the number of vehicles to the number of vehicles who pay tax in Tamil Nadu, there is a mismatch. There are more number of vehicles moving on Tamil Nadu street as compared to those who pay taxes, right? Stamp duty and registration for properties, they are oftentimes undervalued. For example, let's suppose a property has a value of 1 crore in the market. Officially, the sale deed will happen for only 50 lakh. So that the stamp duty that you have to pay is only for 50 lakh. Rest 50 lakh black money exchange will happen. That is a norm across the country. That is not only restricted to Tamil Nadu, by the way. Mining sector is where the mafia gets very strong, and there again the tax is not paid. Power sector losses and civic sector we have talked about already. This is where the losses in the power sector distribution companies is immense, is huge. The government also holds the liabilities for the various loans that the power sector companies have basically taken. On top of that, there is the reduced share that it is getting as per the Finance Commission recommendation. So, union tax devolution and grants, 35% of state revenue receipts. Earlier it was 35%, now it is 25%. Now, Tamil Nadu's share, as you can see, has been declining in successive Finance Commission. Why? Because Finance Commission, in its criteria for provision of funds, talks about population as one of the factor and also income distance. That is, what is income distance? What is your per capita income with the highest earning state? Right? So if the income distance is large, you get more funds. That means if your per capita income is very low, you get more funds. Otherwise, you get less funds. Tamil Nadu has got a high per capita income, so it gets less funds from the Finance Commission. So that is where the article argues that this is also a disadvantage to Tamil Nadu. Now, the challenges, there is a demographic challenge as well. It is one of the oldest population in the country. Median age of 34.25 years, around 9.5 years older than Uttar Pradesh. Around 64% of the revenue receipts are already committed to salaries, pensions, interest payments. On top of that, the new government has announced a lot of welfare measures as well. From where will it fund it remains a major cause of concern. Okay, so that is why there needs to be some kind of rethought into fiscal distribution. Okay, now we come to certain articles relevant for your prelims. Core sector growth slows to 0.5% in May. Coal refinery products down amid crisis. Now, the core sector, now this has also appeared in PIB, by the way. What is relevant for the prelims in this particular case? There are two things which are relevant in the prelims. First of all, what are the sectors which are considered in the core sector? So you have coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery products, fertilizer, steel, cement, and electricity. The maximum weightage provided to electricity, okay, and refinery products, in fact. Now, the other factor that you have to understand is that there are major sectors which have suffered a decline, partially because of the ongoing West Asian crisis. Whenever you have the supply of crude which is impacted, even the refinery products, because in India we have large scale refining of the crude and then it is exported to various countries. So, even in the case of the refinery products, that gets impacted. So, that is why crude oil declined by 4.6%, the natural gas production declined by 4.9%, refinery products declined by 8.7%. Fertilizers also, which are dependent on natural gas, declined by 0.9%. But other than that, even our coal sector declined by 9.3%. Now, this was not dependent on your West Asian crisis. This is something that we ourselves are dependent on. However, steel, cement, and electricity has indicated a robust growth. What does the growth in steel, cement indicate? Whenever you have in the economy the growth of steel and cement sector, that indicates a rising demand of the construction activities. And mind you, construction is one of the larger job generators in the economy. So when you have sustained growth of construction sector, that means there will be a demand created in the lower rung of the economy as well, and that can have a virtuous cycle effect on the economic growth and the economic output. Now, NSA Ajit Doval hosted the NSAs of BRICS nations amidst the West Asian crisis. This is where basically we have had the host of various different meetings, ministerial meets with the BRICS that has been held. Now, this was also held. Now, you had the uh, Chinese NSA also, Wang Yi, who came, and you had the Iranian counterpart also, and discussions around West Asia, the crisis in West Asia, etc., did happen. Peaceful coexistence and a kind of cooperative future is what the discussion lied with the Chinese counterpart. And with the Iranians, the Chinese said that the Chinese are ready to provide any assistance and any kind of diplomatic support to help Iran rise up on its feet. So, this is a kind of a consolidation of the so called global south around Iran. And that is where it is basically emerging as an alternative. That is where the BRICS is trying to regain its foothold. Now, Archaeological Survey of India transfers Rakhigarhi skeletons to the Anthropological Survey of India. Now, Rakhigarhi is one of the largest urban habitations of the Indus Valley civilization or the Indus Saraswati civilization. Now, this is Rakhigarhi basically of 550 hectares. 550 hectares. Now, is one of the urban settlement. Mind you, in history, you would have studied in ancient history that Harappan civilization is not a monolith, right? You have the early Harappan settlements, you have the mature Harappan settlements, and you have the late Harappan settlements. You have certain sites which were present only in the early ones. You have certain sites only in the mature and the late, like the Kali Bangan and so on. So, Rakhigarhi is one of those settlements which has its presence from the early Harappans to even the late Harappan settlement. It has a continued settlement for more than 2000 years that it has indicated. Now, this is where skeletons, uh, one of the skeleton is also kept in a very intact manner, that of an adult woman in the National Museum in Delhi. If you get an opportunity, do visit that. Now, that skeleton, when it was examined, it was found to be 4600 years old. Okay. Now, there are multiple such skeletons. Now, this skeleton created a lot of buzz because at that point of time, you had a theory that Aryans came in and they invaded, and that is what the Harappans were basically composed of. But the analysis of the skeleton, which was done of the adult woman, it did not indicate any of the Central Asian genetics in that. So, that in a way defeated that Aryan invasion theory. But other than that, the other skeletons, particularly around the burial mound. So you have Mound 7 at the excavation site, where you have 56 skeletons. It was considered to be one of the ancient burial mounds. Now, there needs to be a greater analysis of ancient DNA. There needs to be a greater analysis of the profiling. So, for that, it has been transferred to the Anthropological Society of India. Okay. So, osteological assessments, then paleopathological assessments, all of that is basically going to be carried out so that greater detail could emerge about the lineages, about the pattern, about the settlements, and so on. Okay. Now, then net FDI jumped to $6.6 billion in April, highest in nearly 5 years. Now, for a long period of time in our country, we have been observing the net FDI in negative. Net FDI means the amount of money coming in compared to the amount of money which goes out. Now, it has been in the negative owing to Indian investment abroad in many of the cases, which tells you the maturing of the Indian industries as well. Reduced investment in India as well, right? Withdrawal of money from India by the FBIs, etc. So in April, the $6.6 billion is a positive, and that has reverted a trend which was going on for a long period of time. Now, here basically in March 2026, you had $917 million, right? And that is why in April it is the highest. Now, this is a kind of a turnaround which has happened, and this is owing to a slower outflow and also a stronger inflow. The industry wise detail has not been provided for you, just to know what is the trend in the growth or the net FDI. That net FDI has been negative through the later majority of the parts of 2025, owing to the outflow of funds from India. Now, a couple of articles from the PIB. India becomes world's top ship recycling nation in 2025, 5 years ahead of the goal. So, India's ship recycling share jumps to 35.4% from 30% in 2024, as per the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD. So, UNCTAD, as per UNCTAD, basically, India's recycling share has increased, and the goal that India had set up to become the largest ship recycler by 2030, as per the Maritime India Vision 2030, that has been achieved 5 years ahead of schedule. Now, ship recycling provides a lot of job. It is environmentally hazardous as well. So that is why you need to adhere to certain safety standards and environmental norms as well. So the government initiatives in order to support that, Hong Kong Convention, India ratified it in 2019 for safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships. That is what the Hong Kong Convention is for. This becomes relevant for your prelims, by the way. Okay, why do we have the Hong Kong Convention? Okay, so then ship breaking credit note scheme in order to improve our own maritime infrastructure. So a credit note is provided to the ship owners. Now 5% of that credit note can be utilized towards payment of the value of the newer vessel if it is built in Indian shipyard. So let's suppose I have a ship that needs to be dismantled. Now I will be given a credit note like a voucher, and that I can use for buying ships made in Indian shipyard. So that will provide greater funneling of investment back into India. Then inclusion under European Union ship recycling regulations. European Union has much higher regulations to be followed. So India is trying to adhere to those policies as well, which will further increase our share in recycling. Expansion of the Alang ship recycling yard. Now, it is one of the largest shipbreaking yards in the entire region of South Asia, the Alang shipbreaking yard in Gujarat. So that is being further expanded. It is a labor intensive sector as well. So it is having an opportunity to generate greater amount of jobs. Okay. Now, then Home Minister and Minister of Cooperation to launch NAFED's auction portal, nafex.in. So, what is NAFED also becomes important in this. So, NAFED Kalyan Scholarship for Children of Farmers, Drishti Portal for inventory management of pulses and oil seeds, relevant for your prelims. What is the Drishti portal for NAFED about? Pulses and oil seeds. And you have nafex.in, that is a kind of an auction portal, and launch of auction process will be done during this. So, important step to strengthening transparency, efficiency, and ease of operations. Now, what is not mentioned in the PIB is also important for the exam. That is, what is NAFED? So NAFED is basically Organization of Marketing Cooperative for Agricultural Produce, established in 1958 under Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act for promoting cooperative marketing of agricultural produce and the benefit to the farmers. Objective to promote, develop, marketing, and storage of agricultural and forest produce, because in a country where 87% of the farmer is small or marginal, you need this cooperative marketing to have greater efficiency. Assist for technical advice in agricultural production, facilitation, coordination, and promotion of marketing and trading, construction of warehouses as per the Warehousing Act. So these are certain objectives of NAFED. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the discussion for the day. I hope the discussion has been helpful and you have gained some amount of information from your already existing knowledge set. Do take a look and recap of these particular articles and take the quiz in the Telegram channel so that you are able to assess your level of learning as well. So, till we meet again tomorrow, do take care of yourself. And if you have liked the video, bless us with the like, share, and the subscribe button. Take care, be happy, goodbye, and thank you.